Magandang araw sa iyo kaibigan. Magaling talaga sumagot ang ating mahal na Pangulo sa mga isyu at problema na kinakaharap ng ating bansa at muli na patunayan na naman niya ito sa harap ng mga banyaga. Kaya hindi katakataka na mataas ang pagtingin at pagkilala ng mga banyaga sa ating mga Pilipino dahil din ito sa ating magaling at mabait na Pangulo. Halina't, sama-sama natin panoorin ang ating mahal na Pangulo sa pagsagot ng mga isyu ng bansa.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This summit today was historic, bringing together the leaders of the EU and ASEAN for the first time. A special thanks to my co-chair, Prime Minister Hun Sen, Chair of ASEAN, and President Marcos as ASEAN Coordinator for relations with the European Union. Today, we are endorsing our EU-ASEAN Plan of Action until 2027. We also just concluded our EU-ASEAN Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, the first ever region-to-region aviation agreement, and we signed our partnership and cooperation agreements with Thailand and Malaysia. These agreements will strengthen our political dialogue and boost our cooperation with the two countries. Today, the EU-ASEAN celebrated 45 years as partners. And this month also marks the 2-year anniversary of the EU and ASEAN becoming strategic partners. The EU-ASEAN partnership is unique. It brings Europe and Asia closer together to increase the security and prosperity of our citizens. The EU is ASEAN's second largest foreign investor and third largest trading partner. Together, we represent over 1 billion people in 37 countries. So, our partnership is a major force with great potential to tackle global challenges like climate change, digital transition, and free and fair trade. The Indo-Pacific is a region of growth and opportunity, and as a strategic partners, we are strong advocates for multilateralism and the international rules-based order. We share the strong belief that global challenges can only be addressed by working together. And today's meeting is also an opportunity to boost our cooperation for greater prosperity. And one way to do that is through trade. Trade is a powerful engine for growth and for creating closer ties between our regions. Our trade agreements with Vietnam and Singapore are a good example, and we are working on trade agreements with other countries in the region. We can also forge stronger ties for the good of our planet. Climate change is a threat to everyone's existence, and we share the same objective. We owe it to the next generation to cooperate on this global challenge together. We also discuss the importance of the digital transition. This will play a massive part in the success of our societies. So, we need to band together to develop safe, fair, and inclusive digital economies. We also discussed the war against Ukraine and its dramatic consequences for the world, especially on energy and food security. This war blatantly violates the United Nations Charter, and the attempt to change internationally recognized borders by force is not acceptable. We will never accept it. We also discussed the crisis in Myanmar that negatively impacts stability in the region, and we continue to support ASEAN's efforts to address this crisis. We support the full implementation of the 5-point consensus and the personal investment of Prime Minister Hun Sen. Finally, we discussed our intensified security cooperation with several Asian and ASEAN partners, including maritime security. Maritime security is vital for the world, is vital also for Europe due to the importance of trade routes and their protection. It's in our mutual interest to bolster our cooperation in this area. This has been a memorable day. ASEAN can count on the EU to be a steadfast partner. Together, we'll make this partnership even stronger. I thank you.
Thank you, President. May I now invite the Prime Minister of Cambodia to take the floor, please.
Excellency, Madam, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start. I raise my agreement to what Excellency Michael has been raising. For me, I start by warmly welcome to all to take part in the press conference today. Today marks a very special moment for our partnership with the successful and fruitful organization of the ASEAN EU Commemorative Summit. I would like to share the optimism and confidence as expressed by His Charles Michel and Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen regarding the positive advancements of relations between our two regions, and to express that my belief that our cooperation will be further deepened and become more comprehensive with mutual benefit. I'm very delighted with our open, frank, and constructive dialogue on a wide range of topics that are relevant and significant to our region. What makes our partnership even more important is the development of worrisome and fragile situation as the world is facing the biggest trial unseen before. For instance, geopolitical rivalry between superpowers have shaken international order and threatened stability, peace, and prosperity amid the escalation of armed conflict and war facing our two regions. On the war in Ukraine, we reaffirm our firm position on the respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence, and we object the annexation and the threat or use of force against a sovereign state. We underline the importance of immediate cessation of hostilities and the enabling of a conducive environment for a peaceful settlement of dispute in order to pave the way for rapid, safe, and unhindered access to humanitarian assistance for victims who are most in need. With what I have been mentioned, what is our hope is that our two regions has been connected, even geographically far away, but we are connected, become a strategic partnership. And what is the main goal that we can find in our meeting is the free trade agreement between ASEAN and EU, the two regions. That work has need to be done as quick as possible. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Madam President, can I invite you?
Yes, thank you very much, dear Prime Minister Hun Sen, dear President Marcos, dear Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, we had an excellent summit today with our ASEAN partners. Quite a special summit too, indeed, because it marks 45 years of relations between us, and it's a perfect occasion just to open a new chapter in our partnership. We are what you just said and called strategic partners. We stand behind this term. What stands behind this term is the reality of two regions that have so much in common, despite being a world apart. We are the two most successful regional integration projects in the world. We share the same unyielding commitment to multilateralism and the international rule of law. That means the same rules for all, whether big or small, and we both want to relegate the notion of spheres of influence to the past, where it belongs. The European Union pleads for closer cooperation between the EU and the ASEAN partners. Russia has unleashed its war of aggression against Ukraine. War has returned to the European continent, and it is clear that this is not solely a European problem, but the world is feeling the brutal shockwaves of this war on food prices, on energy security, and all this is a stark reminder that today, in this world of interdependencies, there is no such thing as a European problem or an Asian problem either. All the challenges we face today are of global nature and therefore affect all of us. You, ASEAN, know what is at stake, and therefore we are very grateful that you have signed the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with Ukraine. We very much welcome that. The more acute global challenges are, the stronger our partnership must be. And today, we indeed discuss several strands of work to reinforce this partnership. The first one is energy. We want together to accelerate with our partners the clean energy revolution. So today we launched a Just Energy Transition Partnership with Vietnam, for example, similar to the one we have with Indonesia. And we have also decided to start an EU ASEAN new energy dialogue, because we all know renewable energy is not only good for our climate, but it is also homegrown and therefore creates independence and security of supply. Second point is trade. A lot has been said on trade. We want to trade more with each other. We already are each other's third largest trading partners. Our free trade agreements with Vietnam and Singapore are delivering. That's impressive. So the European Union wants to conclude more such agreements with ASEAN countries, and our ultimate goal would be to negotiate a region-to-region free trade agreement. And my third and last point is on infrastructure. Because our energy and trade cooperation will only reach its full potential if it is underpinned by the right infrastructure. Today, Team Europe put forward a 10 billion euros investment package under Global Gateway. And let me end, Prime Minister Hun Sen, by thanking you for your excellent chairmanship this year. I am now looking forward to working with Indonesia under its chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023. We have behind us over 4 decades of partnership, and we will continue championing peace, stability and prosperity together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. May I invite the President of the Philippines to take the floor, please?
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We had an extraordinary opportunity today to collectively look back on our shared successes and to exchange views about our prospects for the future. We look back on ASEAN-EU achievements, most recently the signing of the ASEAN-EU Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement that was signed last October, and the adoption of the Plan of Action to implement the ASEAN-EU's Strategic Partnership for 2023 to 2027. We noted the continued strengthening of cooperation between our regions throughout the pandemic through the following mechanisms: the ASEAN Regional Integration Support from EU+, the EU support to higher education in the ASEAN region, the Enhanced Regional EU-ASEAN Dialogue Instrument, the EU-ASEAN Cooperation on Sustainable Use of Peatland and Haze Mitigation, Biodiversity Conservation and Management of Protected Areas in ASEAN, the Integrated Program in Enhancing the Capacity of AHA Center and ASEAN Emergency Response Mechanism, and the ASEAN-EU Migration and Border Management Program Phase 2, to name but a few. We appreciate the EU member states, and the EU financial institution, in short, Team Europe, for the combined response of over 800 million euro to fight the health, social, and economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic in ASEAN. As we move forward, towards post-pandemic recovery, we eagerly anticipate the resumption of negotiations for the establishment of an ASEAN-EU free trade agreement and of the ASEAN-EU Trade and Investment Work Program. I am pleased that today's summit imbued all of us as ASEAN and EU leaders alike with a sense of renewed commitment to continue nurturing and expanding our unique ASEAN-EU partnership, which will serve us well as we are squeezed by the myriad challenges that we have just discussed, such as the supply chain issues brought about by the pandemic, the global threat to food and energy security made worse by the conflict in Ukraine, and to the societal and economic havoc wrought by climate change, to name a few. I am particularly pleased that this landmark ASEAN-EU Commemorative Summit was shepherded to conclusion during the Philippines' coordinatorship for ASEAN-EU dialogue relations, and that the adopted ASEAN-EU Joint Leaders Statement is reflective of the broad nature of our relations and shows clear commitments from both sides to further enhance our relations. We hope to achieve more milestones as the Philippines continues to guide the ASEAN-EU dialogue relations until 2024. I assure my fellow ASEAN member states and all European Union member states that the Philippines will continue to expend all efforts available to ensure that the implementation of the Plan of Action to implement the ASEAN-EU Strategic Partnership for 2023 to 2027 proceeds as intended. We will strive to expand and deepen our cooperation in the priority areas of post-pandemic economic recovery, strengthening public health institutions, maritime security and cooperation, environmental protection and sustainable economic development, combating, of course, climate change, and connectivity with its new definition, which goes beyond the strict definition of digital connectivity, but connectivity in all manners, by air, by land, by sea, by digital means. We also will work for the digital transition and the lessening of the so-called digital divide, migration, and gender justice. We look forward to nurturing and bringing forth ASEAN-EU relations to greater heights in our role as country coordinator for ASEAN-EU relations in the next 2 years. Before I end, allow me to thank Your Excellencies, EU Council President Charles Michel, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala, and all EU member state leaders for your very warm welcome that you have given us all here in Brussels. And we look forward to the next commemoration of EU-ASEAN relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll now take a couple of questions. Let me start with someone from the Philippines. We had Alexis Romero from Philippine Star. Yes, please.
Good day, President Marcos. How are you doing?
Just about managing.
Okay, thank you very much. President Marcos, you cited in your speech earlier the need to go beyond declaring respect and support for UNCLOS and to see an effective application of the UNCLOS to address maritime disputes. And we all know that this includes the South China Sea row. What concrete measures can the ASEAN and the EU undertake to ensure the rule of law in disputed areas beyond the usual strongly worded statements?
Well, this is one of the reasons that we have these conferences, is to map out any possible actions that might be jointly taken. Because every action that might be taken that objects or brings light to a possible violation of the UNCLOS is much stronger when it is brought about by a group of nations such as ASEAN. And if the EU now, with our strategic partnership, is able to also join their voices to that, then that will be